Hi everyone! Welcome to this week's episode, or session, I guess, of the Google Plus Platform Office Hours. This week we're going to be talking about snippets, a lot about snippets, how you can use them, what you can use them to do, and other cool tools and stuff. Joining me is
I'm Gus, and this is my first time on Office Hours, and I'm pretty new to the Google Plus team as a developer advocate. And I'll just be trying to help Jenny out today.
Yep, and I'm Jenny. I'm Jenny Murphy, developer programs engineer on the Google Plus platform. So I spend a lot of time out there on the Plus page and the forums helping you guys build awesome stuff. And snippets are part of that. So we're going to be talking about those today. And just one quick note about our office hours. We do love getting feature requests from you guys, so feel free to send those in and ask us. But in general, we don't make comments about forward-looking things. So although we'll definitely take your feedback and note it, there's just not a lot we can tell you, especially about release dates and that kind of stuff. But don't let that stop you from asking us fun questions. Great. So I guess we should dig into the snippets.
Yeah, sure. So as someone who's actually relatively new to snippets, just getting started, I kind of would wonder, what exactly is a snippet?
That's a great question. So a snippet is, well, actually, why would I tell you when I can show you? So let me bring up a quick, cool demo of what a snippet is and what it allows you to do. So here we have a snippet in action. So a snippet is a way for you as a publisher to control. So here we have a snippet of one of my example sites, Baking Disasters, as it appears in Google Web Search results. And you can see that there's an image specified, a title, and a description. But snippets show up in a lot of other places. Let's take a look at the page itself. We can see that the snippet is also used in the share box when I share a post on Google+. It's pulled up here, and we can see it. Let's share that. So if I jump on over to Google Plus and reload the page, the wrong key, we reload with the reload button, we can see that the same snippet has shown up on Google Plus. So snippets are a tool for you as a content publisher to control what shows up all over the place. And snippets aren't just used at Google. If you mark up your content in the right way, the same snippet will show up in all sorts of different places, including the 3 top major search engines.
So now that we know kind of what a snippet is, developer care.
So why would a developer care about a snippet? Well, if you don't specify a snippet on your website, the controls that you have in here. We know that you're always going to tell us what's really important about your content, and this is snippets are how we give you that control and how you can specify that for the whole world.
Of information about specifically what that crawler's looking at.
Exactly.
Okay, so then how do we use them? How do we get this snippet functionality to work inside of our sites?
Cool. Well, let's take a look at that. We have a lot of cool tools. Let me switch windows so I can show you something neat. Here we go. Okay. How do you get snippets into your site? There are a lot of different ways to control your snippet. There's a lot of different ways to specify the structured markup. We have a favorite. We have one that we like a lot called schema.org. Schema.org markup is an open standard way of marking up the content that you're publishing And it has some benefits over other techniques. Schema.org markup is added to the content of your site instead of adding new content. So you're just marking up content that's already there, which saves you a lot of effort because you don't have to add anything new. It's also an extremely expressive way of specifying the structure of your page. It's not just about a few fields up top, although there are a few important ones. It is a way of specifying the content in your page for a whole bunch of different kinds of schemas. Everything from recipes, like the one I showed you earlier for the macaron on baking disasters, to locations, and they even get as specific as my favorite schema. There's actually a schema.org schema for structured markup of volcanoes, which is pretty awesome. But anyway, let me show you some tools that you can use to get some snippets onto your content. So, flipping over here, you can see we have a little snippet code generator that will show you some skeleton code for adding snippets to your content. It's on developers.google.com/plus. Once you go there, you can click around and find it under Plugins, Snippet, or I'll be adding a link to it in the show notes. So once you get to this page, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to tell us what kind of content your page has on it. And we've chosen a few really common schemas, but you can specify your own in the other field if you want. But let's stick to a simple one for now. Local business. So let's say I'm marking up my local business for baking disasters, which is, I guess, going into business. It's not just for example code anymore. And let's get an image URL. I don't actually have one handy, so I will use my favorite example site for links that I know won't collide with anyone, example.com. And this would just be the image that you want to appear in the search result, and as well as wherever else the snippet will show up. So in addition to the title and image, you can also specify a description. In this exercise, I'm just typing it in, but you'll probably have content that correlates to the description on the page itself, usually an intro paragraph or something like that. When baking goes all wrong.
So something I noticed, Jenny, in the image URL, you mentioned you used a site that is external to bakingdisasters.com. Is that perfectly acceptable along the way, or is it sort of a best practice to stick to the stuff that's within your own site?
So there are always going to be cases where your image structure, and especially to a lot of you publishers out there. So we allow it, but make sure you make sure this is your image. Make sure that it's something you control. Put it hosting it from a domain you control is important. Yeah. So I'm demoing a bad practice here.
The last thing you'd want to happen is for your images to get switched in your schema behind your back.
That would sure be a shame, wouldn't it?
Yeah. But okay, really good to know. Just something I was thinking.
Good question. Yeah.
Cool.
So let's see what we have here. So what's happening here is as I'm filling out these fields, there's some example schema.org markup showing up in the little pane on the right side. And this is a very simple example of how to do schema.org markup to get you started. In this case, we're adding an item scope to the HTML element of the page. And this is where we tell whatever's parsing that structured markup what kind of content we're marking up. And then we've filled out a few fields here below, which correlate to those text boxes that I typed stuff into just a moment ago. There's the name, there's the image, and there's the description. And this is the basic amount of markup that you need to get control over just changing the image and the title and the description and Google+, Google Web Search, and everywhere else is processing this markup. Yep. But you can go a lot deeper than that. So let's dive into schema.org a little further. I showed you the few schema types here, but there's actually a whole bunch more available. If you just go to aptly named schema.org, you can find a whole hierarchy of different schemas. Whenever you use a specific schema, you can also use any of the different subtypes that are under it in the tree. So let me zoom into this a little bit. I just brought up. I do not know what I did. Let me escape out of here. I've gotten into a accessibility mode that I'm not familiar with.
Click on the magnifying glass.
Oh, the magnifying glass.
It's in the left of your screen. There you go.
Ah, it's been a while since I've used this.
Just to the right.
There we go.
Close it.
Close it.
Save.
Ah, thank you, Gus.
Anytime.
Saved again.
Yes.
So here is the schema.org list of schemas. Whenever you use a specific schema, like we were just using local business, there's actually a whole bunch of different sub-schemas of that. And you can use that wherever that would be, whatever is most specific to your content. There's a whole bunch of cool ones here. One of my favorites is Tire Shop. So all you tire shops out there and you who have pages, or all of you content producers that have pages that describe tire shops, can actually very specifically describe all of the metadata specific to your tire shop, which is pretty cool. And when we arrive on one of these schemas, we see there's a whole bunch more fields. There's the fields at the top, which are pretty much the same as the fields that we filled out on the tool, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff down here below that describes stuff specific to our schema. When you're marking up your content, we recommend that in addition to the basic fields that the tool helped you get started with, that you mark up everything that you possibly can. You want to give us as much detail as possible because we're starting to use that detail in more and more places. And there's going to be really cool stuff that results. So even if you're marking up a volcano, and a volcano is not a schema that we do a whole lot with right now, someday, once we have volcano-aware software, we might be doing some really cool stuff with that particular markup.
Volcanoes everywhere and do whatever we need to do in our Plus apps. So
yes, we can do the best possible sharing with them. And there's actually one specific case where we're starting to use a lot of the more advanced features.
Yay!
Which has been quite popular lately. Where am I hiding it? So in one of these minimized windows, I'll find it. Let me open another one. Cool. Okay. It came up. So here is the Google Plus history beta web interface. So the Google Plus History API, as you may have heard, or may have not heard, just recently entered developer preview. So it's not out for general availability yet, but it's a great example of us doing something cool with schema.org markup that we weren't doing before. It's also an example where we're, for the first time, starting to use a lot of the other details of the schema markup that you apply to your pages to do more expressive stuff. So when you create a moment with the History API that doesn't really express it much, there's a potential for cool stuff to happen here someday, which is always pretty awesome. Yeah.
Yep. Exciting history stuff.
Yeah.
We all look forward to advancements in history.
Yeah, it's an exciting API.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about it. So let's say you've added a bunch of schema.org markup to your pages, which you were going to ask me about, but I derailed us a little bit.
Sorry. So how do we add schema.org markup to our pages, Jenny?
So I've already talked a little bit about how we add it with those tools. Once we've added it, how do we verify that it's actually working? So let's take a trip back to the Baking Disasters page.
I'm looking at it. It says macaron. I thought it was macaroon, as opposed to one or the other.
Yes, I was actually calling this macaroon until I went to the party where we baked it. And I was fortunate enough that a professional pastry chef joined us, and who was very helpful until he got a little distracted by beer and was unable to help us with our macaroons. One of the reasons it became a baking disaster. Macaron is apparently a more specific kind
baking disaster that I would create.
Yeah, it kind of had some potential for exploding, but
wow.
You can read more on baking disasters. Anyway, I've added a bunch of schema.org markup to this site, as I showed you before. If we want to validate that the schema.org markup works, the easiest and most obvious way is you just go and you hit the button and you verify that the snippet looks correct. But this only allows you to verify some of the markup. We have some more advanced tools that are pretty cool. We have the rich snippet testing tool. This one's been around for quite a while, but it still works and it's still great. So let me copy the URL, and we can go to this tool, paste in our URL, or you can paste in the HTML content if, for example, you have a page that's behind our firewall right now. And you can get a report. You can get a preview of the snippet as it will appear in your Google web search result, and you get a really detailed breakdown of all the kind of content we've pulled out of there. So in cases where we may opt to pick one kind of markup over another, this tool allows you to see all of it, kind of like a neat debugging dump. So it's a great place to start. But it can kind of be a hassle. So one of the developers in our team created a new tool. He made a Chrome extension that does a lot of the same stuff. It's called, what is it called? Beta markup? Or, can't quite see it. But I will be mentioning it in the show notes. Micro beta.
Micro beta, there you go.
And what it does is whenever you're visiting a page, you can hit a button and you can see an output of all the schema.org markup on that page. So it's a great way when surfing around your site to validate that your markup is all happy and presenting the way you want it to. Cool. Yep. So
well, I don't have that many more questions, actually. You've answered a lot of the initial reservations and interest that I had around schema.
So you're going to go schema your site now?
I'm going to go schema my site.
Or have you already?
Maybe I already did.
Maybe you already did?
Poorly. I need to go back and do it better.
What are you going to do better?
I'm going to make sure that I'm using all the right types for my posts and other things that are on my site.
Cool. Okay. Well, that wraps out our kind of faux interview here. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Now we're going to go and we're going to answer some of the questions if you've asked any in the forums. So let's go take a look on the Google Plus developers page and see what you guys have been chatting about while we've been babbling here. And I don't really see that many questions about snippets or the Google Plus platform. Just one comment about cameras and mics. We'll get that worked out. We're still working on the studio. So we hope this quality seems a lot better, but we're still working out some kinks. So bear with us during these few weeks of office hours as we get that stuff all smoothed out from a technical perspective. But it looks like there's not a lot of conversation about snippets out there right now. So I guess we might as well wrap it up. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Cool. So, well, just checking for comments in other places. Well, thanks for joining us, everyone. So what we did in a quick recap, we talked about snippets, what they are, how you can put them on your site, and what are the cool stuff that results from you adding that markup to your page. So tune in next week, and we'll be talking about some other developer topic. You'll be able to find our sessions announced on the Google Plus developers page a few days before each session with a detailed topic. And you can also go to Google Developers Live, and you can see several of our sessions that are upcoming and what kind of topics might be of interest to you. So I guess that's all we got for today.
That's all we got.
So thanks, everyone.
Thanks for listening in.
Bye.